was a time where year-long title reigns seemed like a thing of the past in WWE. That was until Triple H, presumably mad that he never got to have one, took over the company's creative direction. With so many blockbuster championship runs under the H-Man's regime, we thought it would be fun to see where they stack up against their historic parallels. We are including any reign that officially lasted over 365 days, sorry leap year fans, for any title while it was wholly part of WWE, so no WCW United States Championships here. Also, we're not counting any of those weird titles that were only really in play for about 5 minutes or so if you're expecting to see Antonio Inoki's reign with the World Martial Arts Heavyweight Championship, then cut that out right now, smart ass. Anyway, let's crack on, lest this introduction last for over a year. I'm Adam Pacitti from Cultaholic Wrestling, and this is every year-plus long title reign in WWE history ranked from worst to best. Join us. Number 29, the Fabulous Moolah Women's Championship, 379 days. Before we get to the Fabulous Moolah's most famous and confusing title reign, let's talk about her oft-forgotten third official run with the original Women's Championship. After Moolah beat Wendy Richter in the original Screwjob, where she disguised herself as the Spider Lady and pinned Richter for real after a backstage disagreement, the Hall of Famer reigned as champ for 219 days before losing the belt to Velvet McIntyre during a 1986 tour of Australia. Moolah would win the belt back 6 days later before going on to reign for another 379 days. So what was the point of McIntyre even winning the title in the first place? Does anyone know? The reason I'm talking about this is because nothing of any note really happened during this reign. Sure, Moolah was champion for over a year, but it's not like women's wrestling was being pushed as a tippity-top attraction during this period. Even with the name value she had, Moolah wasn't considered enough of a draw to get a substantial push. She made very limited TV appearances during this time before dropping the belt to someone else we'll get to in a little while. Number 28, Rockin' Robin Women's Championship, 501 days. Half-sister of Jake Roberts and the best wrestler named after a Michael Jackson song since, actually she might be the only one, Rockin' Robin may have only held the Women's Championship once, but she did so for a ludicrous 501 days. On an episode of Primetime Wrestling emanating from Paris, France, Robin defeated sensational Sherri to bag the title before going on to do absolutely nothing of note with it. Maybe they should have called her Lazy Rebel instead, eh? Am I right? She defended the title almost exclusively against Sherri in a handful of TV matches before making her one and only pay-per-view defense against Judy Martin in a subpar match at the 1989 Royal Rumble. To show how little WWE gave a hoot about their women's division at the time, Robin's next pay-per-view appearance was at WrestleMania 5, where she opened the show by singing America the Beautiful. I mean, can you imagine if Charlotte Flair or Becky Lynch did something like this today? There would be riots in the streets. Robin technically never lost the belt, as when she left the company in 1990, WWE just deactivated the Women's Championship and left it vacant for another 3 years. In the words of the King of Pop, that's bad. Shamone! Number 27, Sensational Sherri Women's Championship, 440 days. Hey look, it's another long women's title reign from the 80s, where the champion did absolutely bugger all. What a shock. Sensational Sherri Martel was one of the toughest women to ever step foot in a wrestling ring, having to overcome significant discrimination during a time in the business where ladies were very much not welcomed with open arms. Her stellar work in the AWA forced promoters to take notice, to the point where she was snapped up by Vince McMahon in 1987 and booked to defeat the Fabulous Moolah for the Women's Championship in her very first match. While Sherri got on TV a bit more often than Robin, she never defended the belt on pay-per-view, her only appearance in that medium coming as part of an elimination match at Survivor Series. She would reign for a total of 440 days before dropping the belt to Robin in the previously mentioned match in Paris. Her stellar debut gives her a few extra points, but Sherri, Robin, and Moolah's reigns all demonstrate that while there's still work to be done, the presentation of women's wrestling in WWE has come a long way since the days of the late 80s. A very long way. Number 26, Gregory Helms Cruiserweight Championship, 384 days. At the 2006 Royal Rumble, Gregory Don't Call Me Hurricane Helms won a 6-way open to become Cruiserweight Champion for the third time overall. He would keep his hands on the title for the next 384 days, absolutely destroying the previous longevity record held by Tajiri, who could only manage a measly 162 days with the belt. Unfortunately for Greg, this reign was a bit of a dud. Though he would get a few title defenses on pay-per-view, Helms was often called on to job out to other stars, such as in a champion versus champion match on SmackDown against Chris Benoit and Matt Hardy, who he fought twice on pay-per-view, winning one match and losing the other, which was non-title, thus telegraphing the outcome. He was also part of Team Rated RKO at Survivor Series, aka the team that got punked out by DX faster than you can say he's married to the boss's daughter. Whilst it had its moments, the way the Cruiserweight Championship was treated at this time led to a less than super reign for the one-time superhero. Honestly, he was a great heel that deserved better. Number 25, the Valiant Brothers World Tag Team Championships 370 days. Though they may not have actually been related, Jimmy and Johnny Valiant had enough chemistry to become the first team in WWE to reign with World Tag Gold for over a year. After capturing the belts from Tony Gurria and Dean Ho, stop laughing, in 1974, the Valiant Brothers reigned for 370 days as World Tag Team Champions, narrowly passing a full year with the belts before they suffered defeats at the hands of Dominic DeNucci and Victor Rivera. As just the 8th different team to win the belts, the Valiants were truly in uncharted waters, but their flamboyant, boastful heel tactics made them surefire heat machines as they defended their prizes against teams involving Larry Zbyszko, Gorilla Monsoon, and even reigning world champion Bruno Sammartino. Unfortunately, because this was so early into the Federation's existence, they still had 3 W's in their name for crying out loud, the Valiants didn't really get the chance to shine in the way that we're used to today. Still, they were trailblazers in so many ways, including in being the first team to break the year barrier, even if they only did so by less than a week. Number 24, the Fabulous Moolah Women's Championship 10,170 days. If WWE are to be believed, then the Fabulous Moolah reigned consistently as women's champion from September 1956 to July 1984. This would give her a reign of 10,170 days, the longest title reign in WWE history and one of the longest things to ever happen, but as with most things WWE tout, this is a load of bollocks. Moolah actually lost the title 3 times during this period, the first one coming in 1966. Since these took place on non-televised events, they are convenient for WWE to ignore. Had they recognised it, her first reign would actually clock in at 3,651 days. Also, it should be noted that this was during a period of time where the belt actually belonged to the NWA. When WWE bought the rights to the title from Moolah in 1984, instead of worrying about something so insignificant as the truth, they pretended that she had been champion the entire time. This makes it a bit harder to rank, as you can imagine. On one hand, Moolah still held the belt for a crazy amount of time and was one of the most formidable and popular names in women's wrestling for decades. On the other hand, this is all just a big lie, and Moolah had a self-created monopoly over not just her own title, but women's wrestling in general. Could we have put this legendary non-reign a little higher? Possibly, but come on, it's the Fabulous Moolah. You know full well why we don't want to give her too much praise. Number 23, Don Muraco Intercontinental Championship 384 days. On an episode of WWF on MSG Network in January of 1983, Don Muraco defeated heated rival Pedro Morales to win his second Intercontinental Championship, becoming just the second person in history to achieve that feat. The first was actually Morales, but don't tell Don that. In the 384 days that he kept the belt, the Magnificent Muraco, as he was known, feuded with big names like Chief Jay Strongbow, Jimmy Snuka, and Rocky Johnson, who probably nicked Muraco's other nickname and passed it down to his son out of jealousy. It was after a match with Snuka that the most famous moment of this reign came, when Superfly leapt off the top of a cage at Madison Square Garden to hit a splash on a prone Muraco in an all-time great WWE spectacle. Unfortunately though, Muraco actually lost a lot of his matches as champion by either countout or DQ, so he can't really be placed any higher than this. Still, if you ask WWE, then about 85% of their Attitude Era roster was in attendance for the Snuka splash, so that's got to count for something, right? Number 22, Pedro Morales Intercontinental Championship 424 days. Well, would you look at that? Muraco's fierce rival is one place ahead of him on this list. Again, please don't tell Don I said that. He's a very big man and I'm genuinely afraid of him. Before he ran into a Muraco-shaped wall, Pedro Morales was enjoying a very lengthy second reign as WWE's Intercontinental Champion. He had won the belt from Muraco, who else, back in November of 1981, and then reigned until January of 1983 when his adversary took the title back from him once again. Over the 424 days that the Puerto Rican star spent as champ, he added some serious legitimacy to the belt, which was only a few years old by this point. Pedro was a former world champion in WWE, so having him reign with this title for so long only made it more valuable. Greg Valentine, Mr. Fuji, Jesse Ventura, all of these names and more fell to the mighty Morales as he continued his run of dominance. Though he wasn't on TV very often due to the nature of WWE's business at the time, he was still a star and helped make this championship what it is today. Number 21, Demolition World Tag Team Championships, 478 days. One day, Vince McMahon and Pat Patterson were in the car when Pat said to Vince, "I want the Road Warriors," and Vince replied, "We have the Road Warriors at home." These were the Road Warriors at home. I'm kidding, obviously. To give Axe and Smash some credit, Demolition were a very popular tag team despite copying much of their entire vibe from Animal and Hawk. They were portrayed as one of the most dominant duos of the Golden Era, thanks in part to this gigantic title reign. At WrestleMania 4, the face-painted Bruisers defeated Tito Santana and Rick Martel to win the World Tag Team Championships for the first time. Little did fans know that they would be watching these two with the belts for the next 15 months, as Demolition's reign would stretch on for a then record 478 days. They defeated the Hart Foundation at the first SummerSlam, took part in a bonkers 20-man elimination match at Survivor Series, memorably entered at numbers 1 and 2 in the Royal Rumble, and defeated their old boss Mr. Fuji and the Powers of Pain at Mania 5 before finally dropping the titles to the Brainbusters. Not too bad for a bunch of rip-offs. Number 20, Trish Stratus Women's Championship, 448 days. Out of every woman, and Harvey Whippleman that one time, to hold the original WWE Women's Championship, nobody had more reigns than Trish Fountain of Youth Stratus. Seriously, what is in Canadian water? Moose spit? Trish reigned with the belt on 7 different occasions, with her longest stint being her 6th, which began at New Year's Revolution 2005. Unfortunately, an injury to Lita waylaid their planned WrestleMania 21 match, so Trish instead defended the belt against Christy Hemme, who was about as similar to Lita as a kitten is to a cement mixer. Then it was Trish who would get hurt, which took her out of action for 4 months. So did WWE vacate the title or have someone beat Trish for it in a quick match? Nope, they just didn't have a women's champion for that entire time. Alright then. Trish's placement on this list is entirely down to the back half of this 448-day reign, which was pretty strong. She feuded with Victoria and Melina before heading into a WrestleMania program with Mickie James, where she finally lost the belt in the best women's match in Mania history up to that point. Number 19, Becky Lynch Raw Women's Championship, 398 days. Plenty of women have begun title reigns at WrestleMania, but Becky Lynch is the only one who can say hers started in the show's main event. After finally having enough of being known as the Irish one, Lynch changed up her character, got super over, and ended up beating Charlotte Flair and Ronda Rousey in the final match of WrestleMania 35 to win both the Raw and SmackDown women's titles. Sure, she lost the blue belt right back to Charlotte a month later, but things went much better for her on the red side, as she would keep a hold of that belt for over a full year before going on maternity leave. During her time as champion of Raw, Lynch had some neat little feuds with the likes of Natalya and Sasha Banks, including a brilliant Hell in a Cell match, but a large portion of her 398 days in charge were bogged down by her rivalry with Lacey Evans, which later collided with her then boyfriend Seth Rollins' rivalry with Baron Corbin to create a big stinky mess that absolutely nobody wanted. Also, there was that weird Shayna Baszler neck-biting incident. Remember that? What was that all about? Anyway, besides those things, not bad. Number 18, Bianca Belair Raw Women's Championship, 419 days. Now just called the Women's Championship and defended on SmackDown, the longest reign in this title's history comes from a time when it was known as the Raw Women's Championship. It is a long, confusing story involving a lot of belt swaps and Charlotte Flair, so please do not ask. The woman behind the 419-day record setter was Bianca Belair, and it all started at WrestleMania 38. After losing the SmackDown Women's title to Becky Lynch in a handful of seconds at SummerSlam, Belair got her revenge by winning the red belt at Mania, which was one of the best matches of the weekend. The EST of WWE would carry the title to the next WrestleMania and beyond, competing on pay-per-view against the likes of Lynch, including in a great SummerSlam rematch, Carmella, Alexa Bliss, and Bayley, including that time she drove her around on a golf cart. Look at her go! Belair beat Asuka at Mania 39, but lost the belt to the Empress of Tomorrow after she spat mist into her own hand and rubbed it in Bianca's Lesnar's face. Not a great ending, but a decent title reign nonetheless. Number 17, Brock Lesnar Universal Championship 504 days. Remember when 504 days felt like a long time to have a part-time champion who barely showed up for work? How foolish we were. At WrestleMania 33, Brock Lesnar and Goldberg exercised the demons of their past by having a banging match which ended with the Beast defeating the Man to capture the Universal Championship. And thus began the great title drought. Across the next 16 and a half months, Lesnar made just 7 title defenses as the whole champions must defend every 30 days rule vanished into thin air. Whilst these defenses were mostly good, his match with Samoa Joe in the SummerSlam 2017 Fatal 4-Way spring to mind, that is just not good enough. To make matters worse, fans thought they were finally getting the end of Lesnar's iron grip on the belt when he was scheduled to defend it against Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 34. Surely this was where they do the passing of the torch moment, we all thought. We all thought wrong. Instead, Lesnar beat Reigns in a god-awful main event, prolonging this bizarre thought experiment until SummerSlam, where Lesnar lost the belt to Roman Reigns. As the kids say, I can't even. Number 16, AJ Styles WWE Championship 371 days. At the same show that Lesnar and Reigns had their dreadful encounter, AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura had a pretty boring match for the company's other top prize. Mania 34 sure was something, wasn't it? Styles had won the WWE Championship for the second time the previous November, ending the dreaded reign of Jinder Mahal on an episode of SmackDown in the UK, where it is now celebrated as a public holiday. The Phenomenal One beat the modern-day Maharaja again, had a weird handicap match at Royal Rumble, and then survived an excellent six-pack challenge to reach WrestleMania and Nakamura, hoping to recapture their glory days in New Japan. As we've already established, they did not. Styles faced Shinsuke a few more times, with the matches steadily getting better before then defending the belt on pay-per-view against Rusev and Samoa Joe. His reign finally ended at 371 days when he took on Daniel Bryan on SmackDown, who turned heel by kicking Styles in the Dixie Carters. Whilst this run could have been a lot better, Styles held himself well as champion, had some decent matches, and this is very important, ended Jinder's reign. I mean, to be honest, he could have been top just for that. Number 15, Bayley SmackDown Women's Championship 379 days. Now we go over to the SmackDown Women's Championship, currently known as the Women's World Championship, which is different from the Women's Championship because, it just is, okay? Whilst Rhea Ripley is slowly getting there, at the time of recording, only one competitor has held this belt for over 365 days, and that is the lovely little Karen herself, Bayley. It was towards the end of her previous title reign that Bayley went full heel for the first time on the main roster, cutting her hair, adopting a meaner attitude, and ruthlessly murdering the wacky inflatable arm-flailing tube men. How could you monster? After regaining the belt from Charlotte Flair on SmackDown in October of 2019, Bayley went on an incredible run, memorably teaming up with Sasha Banks to form the Golden Role Models and helping save pandemic-era WWE TV from being utterly unbearable. She became a tag team champion during this run, fought in a 5-way match at WrestleMania 36, and finally lost the belt to Banks in a fantastic Hell in a Cell match after 379 days as Queen of the Blue Brand. Number 14, the Honky Tonk Man Intercontinental Championship 454 days. After Ricky Steamboat defeated Randy Savage in an all-time classic at WrestleMania 3, he made a fatal error. He asked for time off to be with his family. Incensed that a wrestler would want to enjoy their private life, Vince McMahon booked the Dragon to lose the belt after just 65 days. Who to? Well, I'll give you a clue. He's got long sideburns, he's got his hair slicked back, and his car is a delightful shade of pink. Even though his in-ring skills weren't incredible or anything, the Honky Tonk Man held the so-called workhorse belt for 454 days, which was a record until a certain menacing Austrian came along and obliterated it. Honky would use every dirty trick in the book to keep his mitts on the title, infuriating fans up and down the country until one day he got too big for his jumpsuit. He laid out an open challenge at the first ever SummerSlam, which was answered by the Ultimate Warrior, who beat Honky in 31 seconds to end this legendary reign on the highest of highs. So yeah, he wasn't the strongest in the ring, but that didn't matter one bit. He was cool, he was cocky, he was bad, and he was entertaining. Thank you, Honky. Thank you very much. Number 13, John Cena WWE Championship 380 days. Considering he's he's had the thing more times than anyone else in history, it is astonishing that only one of John Cena's reigns with the WWE Championship lasted for over a year. Although saying that, some of them felt like they lasted way longer. This 380-day reign began when Cena defeated Edge in a brilliant TLC match at Unforgiven 2006, including a spot where supposed babyface John chucked the rated R superstar to his doom off a ladder and through a pile of tables. Horrible, man. He had a rough rest of the year, but started 2007 off with a bang when he took on Umaga in 2 pay-per-view matches, then main evented WrestleMania 23 against the Heartbreak Kid. He would continue to feud with Shawn, a rivalry that included their epic hour-long battle on Raw, before moving on to his next challenger, oh no, the Great Khali. Who let you in? After overcoming the human Redwood, Cena then entered into a feud with Randy Orton, obviously, before vacating the belt due to injury just before No Mercy 2007. An up-and-down reign that started well but ended poorly, this was not John's greatest achievement, but it was far from his worst and helped establish him as the new face of the company. Number 12, The New Day WWE Tag Team Championships, 483 days. Though it was during their first reign as WWE Tag Team Champions, back when the company only had one set of belts, that the New Day developed their incredible heel personas, it was this run atop the tag division that cemented their legacy. After regaining the titles at SummerSlam, Big E, Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods really stepped up the obnoxiously positive mannerisms that were drawing massive heat from audiences across the globe. However, as the reign went on and fans realized how bloody good the trio were, they softened and eventually started to cheer them as good guys. This changing dynamic helped New Day keep things fresh as they battled the Dudley Boys, the Usos, Gallows and Anderson, The Bar, and many, many more. They deservedly broke Demolition's 27-year record for longest tag title run before losing their belts to Sheamus and Cesaro at bloody Roadblock end of the line of all places. Since then, New Day have had many, many, many more runs as tag team champions, but none have ever come close to the magic they captured over these 483 days. Honestly, this reign rocked like the New Day, I suppose. Because, you know, New Day rocks! New Day rocks! New Day rocks! Number 11, Pedro Morales, WWF Championship, 1,027 days. With Bruno Sammartino winding down his legendary world title run, more on that later, Vince McMahon Sr. and friends were in need of a new babyface to shoulder the weight of the company. The man they settled on was a hit amongst Latin American fans, of which WWE had many, the Puerto Rican-born megastar and future Intercontinental title hoarder, Pedro Morales. Before he was a prominent mid-card champion for the company, Morales became just the 4th man in history to win their top prize, which he would hold for a whopping 1,027 days, or just under 3 years. After beating Ivan Koloff for the gold, Pedro followed the pattern that had worked so well for Bruno: get challenged by a baddie, fight them off in front of a hot Madison Square Garden crowd, rinse and repeat. The 1970s, simpler times. In his time as champ, Morales rubbed elbows with legends like Blackjack Mulligan, Mr. Fuji, and Freddie Blassie before finally dropping the belt to Stan, father of meat, Stasiak. Though not as successful as his Italian predecessor, Morales still did an excellent job in carrying the company as its main good guy. Number 10, the Usos SmackDown Tag Team Championships, 622 days. Move over, Valiants. Get lost, New Day. Go demolish yourself, Axe and Smash. Because the longest reign with any major tag team championship in WWE history belongs to this pair of currently divided Samoan brothers. Jimmy and Jey Uso debuted for WWE all the way back in 2010, if you can believe it. They started off as heels before then transitioning into happy-go-lucky babyfaces, then into thuggish bad guys before finally acknowledging their cousin Roman Reigns and forming the Bloodline. It was during this period that the brothers beat Rey and Dominic Mysterio on the Money in the Bank 2021 kickoff show to begin their 5th reign with the SmackDown Tag Team Championships. Little did we know that A, they would hold on to these titles for the better part of 2 years, and B, that they would eventually add the Raw belts to their collection. As well as participating in several great Bloodline moments, the Usos also defended against teams like the Street Profits, RK Bro, and the New Day before dropping the undisputed tag straps to Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn in an emotional WrestleMania main event. Great matches, great rivalries, and an all-time storyline. Sounds pretty juicy to me. Number 9, CM Punk WWE Championship, 434 days. Had WWE wanted to, they could have booked this title reign so it would have ended up comfortably in the top 3 or 4 of this list. For starters, it should have begun at Money in the Bank 2011 instead of Survivor Series after a load of Kevin Nash-based tomfoolery. Secondly, CM Punk should have absolutely been in more main events as champion, but WWE decided to give matches like John Cena versus John Laurinaitis top billing instead. It sounds like I'm moaning, and to be fair I am, but there were also some stellar parts to the straight-edge superstar's lengthy run as champ. 434 days was the longest anyone had reigned with the WWE Championship since the era of Hulkamania, which was refreshing, and even though he wasn't always in the main event, Punk was still given some great partners to dance with before dropping it to The Rock. Daniel Bryan, Chris Jericho, Big Match John, Punk put on fantastic bouts with all of them. Sure, there was also Ryback, but why are you trying to ruin the moment? Though perhaps not quite as good as some may remember it being, Punk's second WWE title run was still historic for so many reasons. Number 8, Randy Savage Intercontinental Championship, 414 days. While some people like to boast about having multiple reigns with the Intercontinental Championship, looking at you, Miz, one run was more than enough for this legendary star. Macho Man Randy Savage bested Tito Santana in 1986 to become just the 7th man to capture the prestigious belt. His first major feud as champion was with George the Animal Steele, leading to a match at the second ever WrestleMania. Was it good? No, but at least they got a nice payday. Over the next year, Savage would reignite his feud with Tito whilst also defending against Junkyard Dog, Roddy Piper, and regrettably George Steele again. All of this built to the 414th and final day as champion, WrestleMania 3. You can see where this is going. Savage lost his belt at the Silverdome to Ricky the Dragon Steamboat in what is still considered to be one of the greatest matches WWE have ever put on. A technical classic that was way ahead of its time, Savage's reign can be considered an elite tier one based solely on how it ended. The fact that he was also a ruthless heel champion who took absolutely no prisoners and got over massively with his performances in the ring and on the stick was a nice bonus though. Number 7, Bruno Sammartino WWF Championship, 1,237 days. Before you get your panties in a twist, this is not Bruno Sammartino's longest reign with this particular championship. You can all calm yourselves down now. After taking a break from wrestling for the McMahons, the Italian Stallion was asked by Vince Sr. to come back and become the first ever 2-time world champion for the company. He did so by beating Stan Stasiak, who had defeated the aforementioned Pedro Morales just 9 days earlier. Poor Stan. And thus began Sammartino's second run with the belt, which would be much shorter than his first, but still clocked in at a staggering 1,237 days, which is nearly 3.5 years. During this period, the champ had a now infamous feud with Stan Hansen, aka the man JBL wishes he was. Hansen legitimately fractured Bruno's neck after a slam went wrong, which led to a heated grudge match at Shea Stadium that was considered one of the best bouts of the entire year. After fending off other enemies that didn't almost kill him, Sammartino dropped the belt to superstar Billy Graham in 1977. It may not have been as good as his first reign, but this was still a ruddy bloody strong effort by most other metrics. Number 6, Gunther Intercontinental Championship, 653 days and counting. Who would have thought that not too long after his much mocked name change from Walter to Gunther that this Austrian hunk would break a record that had stood for over 2 decades. After a dominant run as NXT UK champion, which lasted for over 2 years, Gunther began his now iconic reign with the Intercontinental Championship by beating Ricochet on a 2022 episode of SmackDown. After a bit of a rocky start as champion, things really blossomed for the Imperium leader after Triple H took over from creative. Since then, it has been banger after banger from this man. His matches on free TV alone are the stuff of legend, as he's made great title defenses against Tommaso Ciampa, The Miz, Chad Gable, and many more. And then there's the pay-per-view matches, including 2 5-star bouts at Clash at the Castle and WrestleMania 39. Not bad. Bad for a guy who they almost accidentally named after a Nazi. At time of recording, Gunther is still the longest reigning Intercontinental Champion in WWE history, a little over 650 days and counting. Number 5, Bob Backlund WWWF/WWF Championship 2,135 days. If you believe WWE, then Bob Backlund's first world title reign in the company is the second longest in history. But as we've learned in this countdown already, you can trust WWE about as far as you can throw Titan Towers. He actually technically lost the title to New Japan founder Antonio Inoki in 1979, but it was put back on him shortly thereafter and the change wasn't officially recognized. Still, even with this hiccup, Backlund's second reign would have clocked in at a mightily impressive 1,470 days. To keep things simple, we're gonna trust WWE on this one, famous last words, and survey Backlund's fictional reign of 2,135 days as a whole. That is a lot of days, almost 6 years in fact, and Bob was a smiling, heroic babyface for every single one of them. Before he went bonkers and tried to make Darren Young great again, Backlund was a squeaky clean good guy who would uphold truth and virtue wherever he went. Though fans eventually got sick of this routine, it played perfectly for most of his tenure on top, and fans queued up to see the American hero defend his belt with pride. An oft overlooked part of the title's lineage, Mr. Backlund's mega title run was something to behold at the time. Number 4, Randy Savage WWF Championship 371 days. Some nasty people would call Randy Savage's 371 days with the WWF Championship a glorified transitional reign to get the belt onto Hulk Hogan, to which I say, even if Savage was never quite the main focus of his time on top, he still put in a great showing as champion and helped tell one of the greatest stories WWE have ever produced. After winning his first world title at the culmination of the WrestleMania 4 tournament, Savage would regularly team with the Hulkster as the supergroup The Mega Powers. The pair took on Ted DiBiase, who Savage had beaten for the gold, and Andre the Giant in the main event of the first ever SummerSlam, which they won after Miss Elizabeth got her bum out. Nope, seriously, that's what happened. Look it up. I know I did. Eventually, Savage would grow jealous of his partner's lust for his missus, leading to a vicious heel turn at the main event too, and then a classic Mania main event against Hogan, which is where Savage dropped the belt. The Mega Powers imploding is an all-time great wrestling story, one that wouldn't have happened were it not for Savage's mega title reign, and it should be noted that he defended the title vigorously on the house show loops. Number 3, Roman Reigns Universal Championship 1,302 days and counting. To keep things simple, we are not including Roman's year-plus long reign with the WWE title in this list. It's all very confusing, and it's basically been the same as his Universal Championship run, and I don't have the willpower to talk about it twice, so there. At SummerSlam 2020, Roman Reigns returned from COVID isolation with a new heelish attitude, and new heelish teeth too. At Payback 2020, just 1 month later, he won the Universal Championship from Bray Wyatt, and he's still bloody got it. Roman's time with the belt stretched past his feud with his cousin Jay, his WrestleMania rivalry with Edge and Daniel Bryan, his run-ins with John Cena, Finn Balor and Cesaro, his endless series with Brock Lesnar, matches with Drew McIntyre, Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, and even past the WrestleMania 39 triple threat against Cody Rhodes and that rubber chicken. Though impressive in its scope and home to some exceptional matches, Roman's 1,302 plus day title run has gone on way too long for some people, with many souring on it heavily after the Mania 39 retention. Still, even with that heavy caveat, it's still at number 3 on our list, which is definitely worthy of some acknowledgement. Number 2, Bruno Sammartino WWWF Championship 2,803 days. Okay, now you can get your panties in a twist. The longest world championship reign in WWE history, until Roman surpasses it in 2028, belongs to just the second ever world champion in the company, the mighty Bruno Sammartino. The plan was to have inaugural champion Buddy Rogers hold on to the belt for much longer, but health problems forced the company's hand and the title was hotshotted onto Bruno instead. Instead of crumbling under the pressure, the young Adonis rose to the challenge and quickly became a legend in the squared circle. From May 1963 to January 1971, Bruno took on all comers, valiantly clearing every obstacle in his way to keep the championship out of the hands of evil men. The crowd were with him every step of the way, cheering their hero with all their hearts, always ecstatic when he picked up the big win. When Sammartino finally did lose the belt to Ivan Koloff, the MSG crowd fell completely silent through sheer shock. It honestly felt like the reign would never finish, but all good things must come to an end. A truly special title reign we will never see its like again. Well, unless Roman has his way, that is. Number 1. Hulk Hogan WWF Championship 1,474 days. There have been longer reigns, there have been reigns with better matches, there have been reigns that used up less baby oil, but in terms of the very existence of WWE, this might be the most important one of all time. Hulk Hogan was shrewdly snapped up from the AWA after Vince McMahon noticed just how popular he was becoming. Shortly after, on January 23rd, 1984, he defeated the Iron Sheik to become WWF champion for the very first time. This was the first domino in a chain that would transform the promotion into a global pop culture powerhouse. Hogan's unparalleled popularity emboldened McMahon to take bigger and bigger risks. He had the confidence to launch WrestleMania in 1985, with this title reign running through the main event of the first 3 shows. Roddy Piper, Paul Orndorff, Terry Funk, King Kong Bundy, Andre the Giant, who eventually beat Hogan for the belt in a screwy finish, all these names and more fell to the might of Hulkamania, and fans ate up every single second of it like they ate up their vitamins at the behest of the Hulkster. Without this reign, dear viewer, there would quite possibly be no WWE as we know it today, making it 1,474 days very well spent, brother!